right, and welcome again to Hempire. I'm your host, Pete Barenberg, again with my trusty co-host and well-informed business partner, Nick DiFrancesco of Pure Well. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm actually really happy to who we have on today. Well, I mean, tell everybody who's coming on, right?
Well, we're dealing with a pioneer in the industry, that's for sure. Someone who's very familiar with cannabis as well as publishing. We're talking to Jen Bernstein today.
See, this is what I thought, and that's why I'm excited. Jen, how you doing today?
I am doing awesome. It's such an honor to be here on Hempire with you guys. Thanks so much for having me.
I love it. I love it. And again, that's why I was excited to do this today. We got a lot to talk about with Jen. I mean, let's just dive right into it. Obviously, you led the direction of High Times for over a decade. You handled the meetings. You brought a lot of great editorials. I mean, you ran the whole show. But the most important thing that, I thought that was kind of cool, what most people probably have dreamed of course, you were the judge for the High Times Cannabis Cup, the High Times Medical Cannabis Cups, basically what Playboy is to adult entertainment. If anyone doesn't know, High Times has actually been around since 1974. So it has a lot of, it's got a lot of nostalgia, of course. It's got a lot of lineage in cannabis, really being the first magazine to ever bring beautiful pictures, editorials, great information. I guess it's what National Lampoon's was to comedy, basically. You were there for about a decade. Why do you think High Times have survived all this time to stay as important in the industry as it has?
Yeah, it's been, High Times has been around since 1974. There's such tremendous staying power with a brand that really started it all. And it all comes down to the love of the plant and really respecting this gorgeous female plant. You mentioned Playboy and how sexy that is, and High Times really has that. I believe that same staying power. We have, or High Times has, the High Times centerfold. They really respect the plant and put it out there for everybody to see. And yes, we glorify drug use and we glorify the cannabis plant. And this is, the message that has been the same since the beginning. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no, I think and you know what you're saying is, it's because, when you were young, I was young, everybody was young, we'd be like, oh my God, there's marijuana on a magazine. I can't believe they do that. Or you see the plant, you're like, wow, what a beautiful plant, and the pictures, and everybody goes crazy, of course, for the High Time. I mean, not just the purples, the crystals, the plants. I mean, people just go nuts for, obviously, it's a centerfold like it is for Playboy. But I thought
Sex sells.
sex sells, right? Sex sells. But what I thought was cool is something that you did is you also brought in the cannabis business column, right? You also brought in things that talked about not just the fact that we're glorifying the plant, right? But also the business opportunities, the business aspects of it, the legalization, the editorials, not just, again, that we're talking about a product that's just about glorifying a plant, but really what's going behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, cannabis is now business. And before, there was the illicit market, the legacy market. And what I saw happening during my tenure there at High Times was that this was a real business that was coming. And the first thing that I started was the pot job report, right? The fact that you could now have a job in the cannabis industry. And this was a report of, the first of its kind. And I relied on data from New Frontier Research and seeing where the market was going. And I saw that, some people prefer edibles and the edible market was going to take off. So what could I do to kind of like look into my magic 8 ball and, see what was coming? So in that pot job report, I would write, if you're a chef, you can start creating edibles. If you love to bake, think about new recipes. And so it's like, you can take any skill that you have and transfer it to the cannabis industry. We have a need for marketing. We have a need for press and media and writers. And, what about doctors and nurses? I mean, with the birth of an industry, we need everybody. But I remember writing those first job reports, like there weren't jobs available because it wasn't an industry yet. And so then, we started thinking about cannabis business, and I was like, oh, cannabis business. We're going to make that a word. So I started the first cannabis business column. And, at High Times, I set the style guide, like bong water, one word or two. Very important decisions. And,
right, of course.
In that cannabis,
Trust me, after some arguments, they are.
right? So, I mean, it's a great time to be alive now. It was an even better time, back then, because what we were getting to do was, a lot of people say, oh, you never want to be the first out, right? You never want to be the first one out of the gate. But High Times was the first one out of the gate, right? And so with that, we had so many, oh, we were the first to do that. We were the first to do this. And luckily enough, I, got to be one of the first to do a lot of those things.
One of the things that you were definitely first in, which I think is amazing, is getting onto Sirius XM called Reefer Radio. I mean, you got to tell me how that happened, because you're talking about a huge, I mean, everybody's watching and everyone's listening to Sirius XM. I mean, still do, of course, huge. Howard's on there, everything else. But at the time, there wasn't podcasts from all over. This was really the publication where everybody was going to through a radio and commercial free to get their word out there. And I mean, you had, Snoop Dogg on, Tommy Chung, Jet Black, but how did you get interested on hosting it, first of all? And how did you pitch it to XM? I mean, of course it's cannabis, a dirty word as usual. How did that all come up?
Well, I am a avid music fan. I've seen 225 Fish shows. I've seen 200 Mo shows. If there's a music festival, I've been there. And, when blogs were just starting, I had the first blog on relics.com. And you can follow me on NYC Jam Gal on Twitter. And that's kind of like, I kind of feel like I'm the crossroads or the cross section of, the jam band scene and cannabis media, right? So my friend Ari at Pinkerton over at SiriusXM, he was programming the Jam On channel. So I would go on, and I think one year we hosted the Bonnaroo Breakdown, which was, reporting, from Bonnaroo, or, talking about what's going on there. And that kind of segued into when, High Times is monthly. Every May we would do the strain report. So, Ghost Train Haze comes out. That's Scott Reach over at Rare Dankness. And, this is one of the first strains that's hitting over 30% THC. And Danny Danko, Nico Escondido, and I are all saying, oh, there's no way, right, that THC can go over, 30%.
Of course.
The trichome head bursts at 27%. There's no way. But as we found, it was possible, right? So the more research we have about the plant, anyways. So, Ari reached out to me, and I was doing these reports, and it wasn't long after that we caught the ears of a guy named Rory Belkin, who actually does the kids' channels. The kids'
funny. Well, you got to get them early, right?
And so that was even like more taboo, I thought, because at the very highest, hierarchy of SXM, they're very conservative, and we wanted to do like a test run. So Rory came to me and said, we'll do a 4-show kind of trial run. We're going to pitch it as, channel 420. Like, does your dial go that high? And yeah, it was great. I mean, High Times has an archive of everyone. And it was just really great to pull some of those, old interviews and run some new ones and, start creating what we felt could be, the first of its kind in,
Were they hesitant about it though? I mean, were they kind of like, I don't know. I mean, just even now to this day about advertising and things we talk
that
about,
was it.
And it's crazy, right? I mean, how they still want to silence, obviously we have cannabis radio, we have all these podcasts, we have all this stuff that we talk about, a lot more publications of cannabis, but being the first, anybody that really stuck out under your, like, that where like you did an interview and it was either crazy or just the fact of like, wow, I can't believe they're on the show, or any something special that happened that you could remember on that?
I mean, it was all pretty special. I mean,
you're hosting one of the best shows on there, so it was kind of cool. You gotta have some type of story for me, though,
right? Oh well, I mean, I remember we were. It was very tame, though. That's the thing, because we had to keep it like, we couldn't go like balls out, because we were really
right. Okay,
we were treading lightly.
Super censored.
Yeah. So, I was doing like characters. I was doing like Wendy Wiedekit, where I was like, I would put on this voice and I would say, "Hey, I'm Wendy Wiedekit, and we're gonna teach you weed etiquette, like, pass your bowl to the left hand side, or don't mow the bowl, and put all the greens." So we were the ones creating the content, really. And it was great because we got to be creative. But I remember then two people from the station, Christina Palumbo, who was a huge champion of our work, and she went to the Oregon State Fair, I think it was, or the Colorado State. It was something, and they were going to have like. Yeah, and I'm not even sure if they had weed there. I mean, this is what I'm saying. We were still so ahead of our time.
Well, you had Snoop Dogg on, so there was weed somewhere, right? I mean,
there was definitely plenty of weed.
I mean, he makes it a thing where
you're vaping like under the desk, and you're trying to be cool.
They see all the smoke coming from the bottom, think it's the electricity.
Yeah, you open the door to the studio and you're just kind of like, oh, they know that Snoop's there that day.
I mean, even the new video that he just put out with Eminem, and he talks about how Eminem goes in the studio from such a long time. He goes, "Oh, I know I'm back because I'm with Snoop," and the whole studio is filled with smoke. So, no, it just would have been cool. I mean, obviously Tommy Chong, Jet Black, everybody else. It's just, again, it's kind of the funny where very popular people would still not say anything in public about cannabis. And it was the first time to get out there. And I wanted to bring something back to going back to High Times just for a second. Education and things like that. You're talking about obviously etiquette, smoking, things like that. Is that something that you think that they should have had more about, even in such a view like High Times, where a little more education about maybe the medical benefits, or not just about the plant and glorifying it, or about the cannabinoids or the content, because there's so many people we have on there like, wish I had something that I would have known how to dose correctly, or what medical benefits it would have helped me. Do you think that would have been something that High Times could have benefited from, or what we're trying to do now, where so many people, there's so much cannabis out there, just not that much education?
Well, I think High Times always led the way in terms of education. We had a quarterly publication that was medical marijuana, and in order to not bore our core readership, month after month with the same education, we were forwarding the education. We were the first ones to put, I remember our cover line meeting. We were putting a borch, if you know what that is. It was a bong and a blowtorch, and it was the first rig for dabs. And I remember sitting in a cover line meeting and saying, what are we going to say about this thing? We're putting, a live flame, it's a torch, and it looks like, we're the crackheads of cannabis. And what are we going to say about this? And I came up with, dabs, the future of pot. And, were we creating an environment where we could educate? Yeah, because, we're telling people how to clean these things.
Right.
With the vape pen reviews, which I led, I would get 100 vape pens and I would get 30 people to help me test all of these vape pens. And this was, before there was Puffco. I remember
Right.
calling Puffco and calling Roger on the phone and saying, hey, Roger, buckle your seatbelt. And he's like, why? I was like, your life's about to change. He was like, huh? I was like, you just won the vape pen review for High Times, right? Like we made Puffco into a multi-million-dollar company overnight, right? So you want to talk about education, Roger originally was using, metal in the vape pens, right? And I would have frank conversations with Roger about, when you're burning these things, there's toxins being released. And then we switched to ceramic bowls. So did we really need to be educating, all the time about, why, ceramic is better than, say, a metal nail or a titanium nail, or, heating up at 400 plus degrees, is going to kill your terpene profile. And, we were educating ourselves.
I just think that it's a trusted source of any kind right now when there's so much information out there is so important. Like, yes, something as simple as a ceramic, bowl versus a metal bowl or something else. But, the new products that are coming out or either ways, I mean, all of it is education. All of it's important. And I think it legitimizes what we're doing a little bit more than just saying, oh, we're smoking weed and we're having fun and this is what it is. I feel like little things like this, as well as medical education as well, it just legitimizes it. And that's really what we're all trying to do, right? The industry has grown from the fact of we couldn't talk about cannabis to standards that were put on it and censorship to now, how do we get this out there to the public that's a little bit better than what's happening right now? Or helping people in positive ways, not just for fun, because we know it's for fun. We all love it, but also the other benefits as well. So we love what you've done with, again, a lot of these different things and being the innovator and really at the forefront of all of this. I mean, obviously you're working on a lot of new things as well. You're at Sensi Magazine now. The show, was it live, by the way, when you were on the podcast for XM, or is it delayed? Was it a recording or was it live?
Video was not even really a thing. I mean, I'm a selfie taker. I love to shoot video. I think Vine. Do you remember Vine? Those like 7-second clips.
Of course.
Or 14, whatever it was. Like,
it came for about as long as
yeah,
it's here for.
I mean, that was, social media at the time. We were doing Vines. So with everything, there's an evolution. And, just continuing to create that. And now with that evolution, my own personal evolution has landed me now at Sensi. I've got a 6.5-year-old daughter. I left High Times when she was 1. I continue to freelance for like Northeast Leaf and Cannabis Now and all of the other cannabis magazines. I started the Women's Cannabis Club in New York City during the time that I left in between, now to Sensi. And, Sensi is really the grown-up version, I feel, of High Times. And Sensi is different in that they aren't glorifying the plant, and they aren't showing people smoking, and they aren't really like, it's not in your face. And what I appreciate about cannabis lifestyle is what Sensi is bringing to the table, in that, we're producing content for our readership that could be new, could be legacy, could be, just mildly interested. But what our content does is it really attracts, a readership who is interested in the lifestyle around cannabis. So I just got in the mail Puffco's new proxy. I'm totally stoked to try that out. Is it for everybody? No. But, is there a way to display all your cannabis pieces? Or um, is there a way to represent cannabis lifestyle so it does hit so many different people? And that's where we're at with cannabis media, is being able to reach the public, knowing that there's so many types of weed smokers, or consumers, um, and
And CBD, again, that's our market. So we talk a lot more on the hemp side as well, with THC combinations, specialty formulas. So there is such a different, like you said, there's a big industry here. It's not just cannabis and marijuana. It's everything, and being educated. I
everyone.
like you saying that it's a grown up version of High Times, because we all know that it needed that, right? As we've grown, something needed to grow as well. And it's not just that you have been in cannabis. I mean, you've been in, the Village Voice, Good Housekeeping, US Weekly. You even worked for Trump Magazine during the Celebrity Apprentice days. So yeah, I would love to know how it was working at Trump Plaza. Of course, being from the Northeast, we all know Trump very well, before and after presidency. So, but I know that there's a lot of great things. But one of the things that people don't really talk about, or we've noticed, is magazines and print have been in a decline about 20% now, versus digital media companies, because they're buying the brand names and they're digitalizing them. How do cannabis magazines like Sensi, High Times, and all these different ones avoid being in that decline?
One of the ways that we can show that we're not in a decline, right? I think we're a reflection of the overall industry, right? So California not doing so great. Brands don't have money to invest in cannabis publishing and advertising, and that's our bread and butter in media, is advertising, whether you're getting eyeballs digitally or in print. But something that I really value is print, and being able to hold a magazine and to see, right, and to flip through. And my love,
How can you give that up? I mean, digital's great, but it's not the same.
well, and
I mean, you can't get seeds out of it on digital.
like, you want, Sensi creates such beautiful covers that you want this on your coffee table. You want to display this, and I want our content to be able to reflect that quality alongside these brands that need to get to the eyeballs of consumers. And so what I feel is that, yeah, print could be in a decline, but there's always going to be a need for magazines. And it's just going to become a luxury product, right? Not everybody gets to be in Sensi Magazine. Not everybody gets to be on the cover. And it's the same with High Times or any other magazine. But I'm working, my first issue for Sensi is the fall issue. It's going to be ready for MJ BizCon in November. And I want everybody at MJ BizCon walking around with this magazine, and for these CEOs to be flipping through and being like, whoa, here I am. And we're talking about the future of cannabis, where we're going. And we're also talking about where we've been, right? What are the lessons that we're learning? How can we improve? How can we continue to change the stigma that surrounds cannabis? And that's my mission, right? And so with Sensi and this growing up, and evolving with cannabis, that's how we do it. We're changing the stigma by showing that this is 100% acceptable. It's here to stay, and this is who we are.
I love it. I was looking through it today. Actually, the episode, the new cover in Florida is DeRay, good friends of ours as well. And have you ever been surprised at which notable person who's been subscribed to High Times or Sensi, or I know you can't give names or anything, but is there anybody that's ever, that has been a big follower that you were maybe shocked about? Or even it could be Sensi now, could be High Times, could be both. There's got to be some high profile people that didn't want to know about cannabis or,
Right.
but silently is subscribing.
Well, I remember when Martha Stewart was getting in on the game, right? Before youth, and that was a big surprise to me, right? But amazing.
Before Snoop got to her?
Yeah, I mean,
Because, if they were.
oh yeah, there was talk about her being,
They probably bumped into each other at the same dealer.
right? And it's always surprising to me. I believe the women, right, who are stepping out because we're the moms, we are the deciders in the family, and I still feel that
The responsible ones.
I mean, there's plenty of responsible dads who consume cannabis, but I think women, we're still battling that, equality thing. And we have a long way to go. I would even say, in the cannabis space, yes, women lead the way in this new industry. Like it used to be 37% of women hold leadership positions. That dropped to like 27. But in terms of like people who are following along, and I got a great follow the other day on Twitter by Katie Tur. And, she is, on TV every day. And her husband is on, CBS Sunday morning. So it was just really interesting to me that, behind the scenes.
I love that. I mean, obviously a huge name.
Another woman in media today, Jean Chatzky, who is, one of the ways women can really empower themselves is to plan their financial futures. And Jean Chatzky is all about financial planning, and she's on CNN every day. And yeah. So I'm really always thrilled by women in media who support one another, right? And I find that it can be a very inclusive type of community, and that's what I'm all about.
But again, it's almost kind of like, you hate to say it like this, but is it kind of like coming out of the closet for some people? It really is. It's talking about the fact of their use of cannabis. They're okay with saying, yeah, I smoke marijuana. I use CBD.
Yeah,
I think that this is a great therapy.
Yeah, I think it should be smart women smoke weed. I mean, and that's it. And that would be
There's so many
platform. Smart women smoke weed or consume cannabis. Smart women consume cannabis. It's good for us, right? It helps with stress. It relaxes us. It can be an aphrodisiac. For me, it helps with my IBD. When I'm in a flare up, the number one way that I can heal myself is through cannabis. And, my mother, who was like, "You're going to work where?" When and people were like, "Are you going to put your name on the masthead?" And I was like, "Yes, this is who I am. This is what I'm proud of. I'm not going to have a nom de plume, but telling my mom that she should be taking CBD every day, that it's so benign and so good for you that it's going to end up in our multivitamins probably in 10 to 15 years. So I want to know, why isn't Johnson & Johnson creating No More Tears baby wash with CBD in it? You're welcome.
I love that. That's an
Johnson &
amazing
Johnson,
point.
for your billion-dollar idea there. But do I want my baby to be bathed in CBD? Yeah, I do. It's great for inflammation. It's a huge moisturizer. And it, like I said, it's as benign as anything else that's going to be found in our multivitamin.
And I think that's what you said, smart women and smart people. Instead of using all these things that are giving you side effects, contraindications, drug on drug interactions, how about use something that doesn't do any of those things, that helps with everything you just mentioned without all the negatives that you always hear. Obviously, that's what we pride ourselves on. That's what we do here at PureWell. And we try to bring these specialized formulas to the public and kind of for the narrative of education, which let's talk about that, about how everybody is having to continue to keep fighting this negative press that the mainstream media outlets tell the world. I mean, I want to read you something from a hit piece from the Spectre last year. They wrote, "Big Dope wants its customers to love its products and to use them as often as possible. So what does it do? It makes a lot of different varieties to maintain interest. Still, no one saw the sheer volume of choice coming. People still used to smoke marijuana. Now they vape it, eat it, slather themselves with it, and even shove it up their asses. Because frankly, why not? What's the most important thing that we can do to get the real story about cannabis out there without giving the bigger media companies a win?" And I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we're really fighting people that are completely on the other side, maybe even like Big Pharma, because they don't like it. They don't like that there's an alternative to what they're pushing and their billion-dollar agenda. So what do you say to that? And how do we continue to fight this negative mainstream, since you are a big public head in this space?
Well, I think, once we hit the mainstream and look, we're there. We have to continue, just as you're saying, the education. But number one is testing. The fact that here in Maine, where I am right now, they test for the recreational market, they test the cannabis, but they don't require it for medical. Okay, so here you have patients who are using this as a medicine and it's not being tested. And then here you have the rec market and they're putting those guidelines on the rec. So overall, as an industry, just do better. We need testing. We need to reschedule cannabis. As the government should know, we have to be able to study and research the plant. We need federal legalization to be able to really, it's not just the decriminalizing, it's the rescheduling. It's like, it shouldn't even be
right. Come on. I mean, heroin, it's next to heroin. I mean, let's stop it now.
We know
I mean, this is crazy.
Benefits. Schedule 1 says no medicinal benefits. So how can you contradict yourself? All right. So testing is number one.
Right. They do that all the time. but the truth is you're exactly right. I mean, for people that don't know, I mean, you're Scheduled 1, obviously addictive, no medical benefits. Those are the two harmful, these are the three most important, but the two are the most important of making it a Scheduled 1. And when you're going to say a connotation now again, maybe back in the day, they looked at marijuana like, oh, but never has somebody said marijuana and heroin in the same sentence, no matter what time period it was, even though hemp was founded 4,000 years ago, BC. But I'm just saying, when you say marijuana, you say heroin. Come on. They're not even in the same, but yes, they are when it comes to Scheduled 1 narcotics in the United States. So what are we doing here, people? This is why we've got to get educated. This is why we have people on like this. We're trying to forward the narrative to let you know there is a lot of medical benefits. There's a lot of education that needs to be done, but we still have so much more fighting to be done. Now, speaking of that legalization, the regularization, for example, like on our boxes and everything we do, I was the first one to come up within the CBD market to have COAs posted on a QR code right on a box for everybody to just use their phone and see what's in a product and what's not. You can find that all at purewell.com, of course, or on any of our products. But you can see that we make sure that we want to have that regulation. What are you getting in? All the pesticides, all the heavy metals, all the things that you talked about in the medical marijuana that needs to be done is being done in the hemp market, at least on our standards. And I will make sure of that. And that's the things that need to be done. I mean, people are like, Ethan came on our show last week and he talked about, I love to go to a dispensary instead of a dealer because it's tested. Now, he is talking about medical marijuana, and he's talking about that there in Boston. So why is it state by state it different? Why are the public of recreational, like you just said, the masses getting the regulations, and the people that have cancer and abundance of other medical reasons that they've got a medical card for, and then they don't get testing? I mean, come on, this is crazy. I don't know if it's necessarily just federal regulation, because as you can see, putting a lot of new issues on state by state regulations right now. We won't get into all that, but it should be a state by state thing. I think that every state should be on the same page. Maybe it shouldn't be federal. Maybe we can get something done quicker going state by state and making this, holding them more accountable on a basis instead of trying to make this great federal law, which is going to take forever, where we can do something local a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So maybe that's another thing that we could think about.
Yeah. I live in New York State. Half my time is here in Maine. And so as I'm watching New York State come, online and on board, I'm very aware of the challenges that other states have had. And I'm, thinking to myself, just listening to you talk, okay, if this is, a state by state thing, are the states that are legal talking to each other? And I know that, New York took a tour of Colorado, but, who's talking to California right now? All eyes should be on California and watching as it fails. The California market has failed. And across the board now, cannabis sales, across the country are down. And I want to know, New York, what are you doing to ensure that our state and our industry is stepping out on the right foot? And we have a great bill, really with helping minority businesses achieve success and being the first to get the licenses and supporting not just, people of color, but women and other minorities, right? So we have a really great plan in place, and on paper, it looks amazing. But once you start thinking about, the taxes and what we're going to be taxed at and, what is testing going to be? I don't know, but has anybody from New York State contacted me and wants to know? They haven't. but they should. But they should. And, maybe it is me going to them and just saying, hey, look, I'm a resource here. Happy to help in any way as we grow what will be the largest market for cannabis in New York City.
It was funny. I know you were talking about California, and you're right. Are people speaking to each other? I mean, let's be honest. Are we working as a team? Are we working individually? Anywhere, your job and your schools, in your family, if there's no communication and new teamwork, you're never going to grow. All right. More heads, the better, of course. And I think you're right. And, I know the Sacramento Bee reported California Governor Newsom and the state lawmakers are poised to eliminate tax on marijuana growers. So that's something that they are definitely trying to do because, like you said, I mean, to me, a lot of our farms are in Colorado. I have 2 farms in Colorado, 1 in California. I do feel that Colorado does it a little bit better. And they're like the OGs of the space for hemp and marijuana. But I do know that something like this where they're not going to be taxing the marijuana growers. Some of the cannabis industry say that the tax cut doesn't go far enough, with the industry advocates arguing that they were just shut out of the process. So something like that, do you think that Now, it will be voted on by state lawmakers later this summer, and the cannabis cultivation tax paid by growers would be sent to zero while they exercise tax. Now, we always say that tax getting from cannabis, for example, in Colorado and things like that, where they were helping the school systems, they were helping the streets, the roadways, they were buildings. I mean, anything that the state needed to raise extra income for cannabis sales and tax were doing it. But this will be shifted from distribution to retailers. So it will remain at 15% for the next 3 years for the people paying for cannabis, but the burden, the tax burden will not be from the actual manufacturers. And how do you feel about something like that?
On one hand, I feel like it's too little, too late, right? I know growers right now who are struggling. We're heading into a recession. It's not looking great. I mean, I know businesses who are just not growing this year. I know growers who aren't growing. At $800 a pound, it's just not worth it. And,
Right.
This is an industry that cannot be reactionary. We need to be forward thinking. So that's why I'm like so adamant about New York State being like, come on, let's get with the program. Yes, it'll help the growers, but still, if, it used to be the American dream. It was all of our dream that, cannabis would be legal and that we wouldn't be criminalized for loving this plant, for loving this medicine, for helping and healing ourselves. And we wanted to bring that cannabis to the masses. But why now go above board? It's just, there's still plenty of reasons, don't get me wrong, and for all our brothers and sisters who have helped us get to this place and have been incarcerated. And, I don't want to roll back the clock on that at all. But instead of being reactionary, we really need to be more forward thinking. And, we keep saying, if it's legalized, then these businesses will be able to write off, basic tax expenses, right? We haven't done enough to want people to go above board and actually become a business and get back into this again. It's going in the opposite direction. So what can the government be doing to incentivize business? Because as we all know, cannabis is a huge driver of jobs, right? I would write that,
Absolutely.
that
Absolutely.
report.
Well, there's a huge job market now because of cannabis.
Right.
I mean, in all different spots, all the normal things you were talking about, like chefs and things like that. Yeah, but editorials, business, lawmakers, politicians, lawyers. I mean, just marketing special. I mean, everything.
Job creators. So why not incentivize people to create cannabis businesses? Create the innovation, create the space that allows for this creativity so we can have more people like Roger and Puffco creating, that's what we...
And Purewell. Don't forget Purewell.
And thank you, Purewell. I mean, this is what I'm saying. And, cannabis radio in general. We need all of it to be able to get the messages out there and to have these open dialogues and discussions of what works and what doesn't.
Absolutely, I agree. And again, I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit about Sensi real quick, just where they can go, sensi.com. It's sensimag.com. We're really excited to what you're going to be bringing to Sensi Magazine. Hopefully, maybe a little article on Purewell. We don't know. We'll have to talk about it. And this is why we do this, guys. I say this, guys and girls, every day when we're doing these podcasts. We have the people we have on for a reason. If there's any way we can make this show better, if there's any question that I could have asked Jen that you would have loved for me to do, and to really get our voices out there, please click like, subscribe, rate, tell your friend, let us know, comment, give us a review. We're doing this for you. We're doing this for the cannabis industry. We're doing this to educate and to help everybody else out there to understand how to legalize this in a medicinal way, but also just to make your experience, your lifestyle better, however you use cannabis. You could also email the producer, Brasco, Brasco, at cannabisradio.com. He's always looking for suggestions and things that we could do to make this show better. And we appreciate you coming on, Jen. We really do. I'd love to talk to you a couple minutes after the show. But I don't know, Peter, I don't think you should take us out.
I mean, you kind of did it already for us, but we do thank you again for your time, Jen. And we do want everybody to, find us on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, wherever you do like to get your podcast there. Don't forget to drop us a like and a review, subscribe, and we appreciate your time. Everybody, remember, get out there and get educated on what hemp and cannabis can do for you.